Thank you very much, and thank you for joining. After lunch, usually people are very relaxed. Let's see if I can grab your attention. Um, once upon a time, it's not going to be a horror story. Once upon a time, there was this girl who was very pretty and very kind, but generally overlooked because she was wearing rags. She was kept under lock by her evil sisters, stepsisters, and her stepmother. Most of you probably recognize the story of Cinderella, who then, when the prince decided to have this lavish ball where hopefully he will find his future bride, Cinderella couldn't go. She didn't, look very presentable. But then this magical fairy came along and with a whisk of her wand, make her look into a real princess. And not only did she join the ball, but she luckily missed her glass slipper. And what did the prince do? Well, the prince decided to go around the whole kingdom and try and experiment the glass slipper on every single maiden's foot until he found the right one. So who is the Cinderella in our Agile fairy tale? I do not know what is happening. It's customer collaboration. Because it is constantly overlooked. Now, most of you have probably seen this text 2,000 times or more. And 3 of these are things that we have been improving very well on, like individuals and interactions, customer working software, responding to change. But I believe that customer collaboration turns out to be our Cinderella. It's the one that we struggle to work with because it's pretty hard, so we kind of overlook it quite often. In 2001, in planning extreme programming, Beckenfala wrote, "All the best talent and technology and process in the world will fail when the customer isn't up to scratch." XP required customer on site. This was an absolute need. And compared to all other principles and practices that we have now well adopted in our software development, this is the one that we struggled with, and it pretty much kind of failed. And even though we're trying, so I'm not saying that we're not improving on this field, I just believe that we are a bit slow on improving as fast as the others. There is this survey on agile and lean usage in Finnish software industry by Rodriguez, and it was a survey that was done with 408 software experts from Finland, all coming from 200 different organizations. And the second biggest challenge in Agile and Lean adoption was judged to be customer-supplier collaboration. Now, this is from 2012, but still our current research and thorough analysis shows that we are still very much struggling in involving our customers and actively collaborating with them. So what can we do, right? Okay, we know it's a problem. What can we do about it? Before I continue further, I would like to clarify what we perceive as customer for this talk further. It's the person who, or the people who pay for the product and the end users. So this is the group we're going to look at. So how many? Well, there is no right answer. It depends on the complexity of a product. It depends on the complexity of our business context. And maybe it's a good point to mention that while we seem to be scaling Agile in all methodologies, numbers, and all kinds of things, we probably should also think about scaling the amount of customers and the collaboration practices that we use to work with them. So how do we involve our customers? I will now share with you this being a conference Agile by Example, I will share with you 3 examples. A note to make or a disclaimer is that when it comes to internet economy products or online services and apps, in that case, considering the massively now used lean startup approach, you have a much quicker feedback, much quicker release to the customer, and you can get the feedback, you can have A/B testing. A friend works in a company where they had AL testing. Yes, all these letters. And in these cases, usually the challenges are less or slightly different. So we're now looking mostly at products that are off the shelf and that take a bit longer time to release. So the first story I want to share with you, it's research. It's a paper which is now under review and will be soon published. It's called Exploring Software Development at the Very Large Scale, an exploratory case study and research agenda for agile method adoption. It's the research was done by a few of my current colleagues, and what they did is that they analyzed a program which was run in Norway. It is one of the biggest agile solutions with a budget of over or around 140 million euro. It was spanned over 4 years. It was called Perform, and it was for the pension, the government pension fund. So in total, it had 175 participants, 4 years, as I mentioned, and this governmental institution, it has around 380 employees, and the services that they deliver are delivered to 950,000 customers, which is quite big for Norway. One interesting thing for this case is that it was huge, it was governmental, and it delivered well, and it delivered on time. And one of the key elements, they had a very strict deadline, since it was related to a reform that was made, and some of the services that they delivered needed functionality upgrade, they needed new functionality, and they needed a total platform renewal. In case you don't see all the details in the back, it's okay. It's just to give you an idea. So basically, the program was split into 4 projects or sub-projects, which were architecture test, business and development. Business was the part where you would have mostly the analysis of needs and beginning of solution description work, which would be primarily done with a very active interface with the architecture team and members from the development feature teams. These were in total, the development teams were in total 12 co-located teams, which were split into 3 different sub-projects. Here they're noted as Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, where the Gamma one, which was had 6 teams, was primarily manned with people from the department, while the other 2 teams were primarily manned with people from 5 different consultancy companies. So it was quite a complex group of people. They were all co-located in one huge floor. And what was interesting is that most of the interviewees give a very strong feedback that the proactive customer involvement in this business project, there were 30 domain experts from the department full-time working on this project. And product owners from this project were the product owners for the development teams. And the feedback is that this very active customer involvement and customer collaboration was the key or one of the most important factors for success. Some points on the customer involvement in this story. First, as I mentioned, the product owners were members from the business project. And this meant that where you define and discuss and prioritize the epics, these are the same people who are as product owners in the development teams. Then we had that the solution description was teamwork and the teams were dependent on need. What that means is that the teams were pretty much created around feature needs and around needs analysis and solution description, which meant that all the people that were knowledgeable or could help in the solution description would be joining this team. Now, some reported some challenges with the fact that sometimes you would have someone like a functional architect being pulled out from the team. However, the overall fluid communication and mix of the right people with the business skill and the technical understanding per feature or per problem turned out to be very efficient. Another point was that the solution description was conducted continuously and iteratively. And what that means is that it was continuous during the current release or the current iteration, and at the same time, these teams on description solutions and analysis of needs were working for the future iterations simultaneously. So you would have multiple work for multiple iterations. So the flow was constantly working and the preparation work was done well. And last but not least, some of the feedback was that the boundaries between the phases, especially the first ones of analysis of needs, solution description, and implementation or construction were pretty much blurred. And that was a very interesting situation in which both customer representatives could go and talk directly with the people who were developing the solution, as well as you can have even consultants from some of the teams with consultants going back and questioning the original high-level requirements and needs. Some quotes from one of the a TIC architect. He said, "We could talk to anyone who might have the answer." They had pretty much this comfort of constantly being able to go to whomever they needed with the business skill and the domain knowledge. And in practice, high-level requirements and, man, this is so big and difficult to read like this. In practice, high-level requirements and solution description merged more and more as the contractor starts to understand more about the context, the customer's real problem is more visible, and this means we can find a solution together fast. So you had this constant collaboration, which, as mentioned in the beginning, was considered to be one of the key success factors for this project. So this is story number one. If you could afford and do this in your company, to find a way to make your customers being full-time involved and dedicated to being available and working in full-time collaboration with you, I think it's a brilliant option. So you just got to try it on, and hopefully that's the foot that will fit for your customer collaboration for your organization. Story number two. It comes from my practice or my previous practice as a agile coach. I worked together with a colleague in one of the sites of a relatively big international company in online travel services. And the site where we were at, they had around 10 development teams. And what we observed when it came to the collaboration with customers, who in this case were the internal customers in addition to end user feedback, but mostly the internal customers who were defined as business owners. What was interesting was that in this case, the example is of a product which allows division into sub-modules. And then the business owners that were appointed for the different sub-modules were the go-to people for this piece or chunk of the product. So you didn't have this universal person that's responsible for the whole product. And what was interesting was that the teams who had very well-defined business owners, their go-to people, the people that they could collaborate with, who in addition had disciplined communication between themselves so they could prioritize and be clear on what's the general prioritization with respect to the big product vision. The teams that had these people, these business owners, had a much higher product increment or development compared to the teams who didn't. And another interesting thing that we observed is this was and still is a very successful company which relatively often would acquire and acquire different businesses and markets with similar kinds of products. And what will happen is that every now and then when this happens, you will get this rearrangement of business owners. And sometimes there would be this period in which a team which had a very clear business owner comes to a point in which, well, we're not entirely sure. And there's this tiny period of time in which that collaboration isn't so well defined and ordered as it was before. And you could immediately see, like in a sprint or two, you could see how that reflected on the team. You could observe the flash or the response of the system when this setting was changed. So from my experience, I totally would advise if you could split your product, if you could have people, internal customers, or be that external customers in your case, who could be the go-to people for specific elements, I believe this works pretty well, as long as they collaborate for the big product vision, of course, and prioritization there. And the third example, I'm going quite fast, I'm not sure about the time. Brilliant. And the third example I would like to share with you is, it's more of a coping mechanism. It comes from a study that was done with 30 development experts in 16 organizations in New Zealand and India over a period of 3 years. So they were followed, and it is by Huda, and it's the impact of inadequate customer involvement on self-organizing agile teams. In addition to this paper offering a good overview of major reasons, it's empirically based, but major reasons for these particular 30 environments, what are the main factors of lack of customer involvement. They also had a good list of the coping mechanisms and how did these teams and environment go around them or address these problems. And one of the, I mean, it's from 2011, but I think it's a good example as a first step, because I could assume that some people are thinking, well, that's great, but can we do this whole, customer re-involvement on a high scale? Well, in the spirit of experiments and trying, like the prince being vigilant, this is a small step, and but no step is too small. It's that we define the customer representatives as story owners. So each or multiple customer representatives own stories, and only stories that have customer representatives assigned as owners are the ones who get into the prioritization of the backlog. And in that way, what happens is that this was a response to the struggle of some of these environments in this case study, where they didn't have prolonged or long enough access to customer reps at their environment. So people would come and go, and this expectation that they would be responsible for the whole product seemed to be difficult for them, where one starts, another one continues. So what they would do is that they would make sure that the customer representatives who are there have ownership and have an absolute much higher involvement because of this ownership and because of this even need to share their results with other customer representatives. They seem to really be motivated by this. In addition, the team was never dependent or struggled because of someone's lack of presence, because the ones who were there were the ones who had knowledge for the stories that they owned. So this was, I guess, a successful step. Again, it's a small one, but I think we just need to try and experiment with different ones, and I encourage you to try in your environments. And one of the principles in the manifesto was business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. I hope we manage to achieve this more and more in the future, and that our experiments help us find, the foot that fits the glass slipper. So good luck with that. Thank you.